All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Canelo Alvarez actually has I think, a pretty difficult fight ahead of himself with Billy Joe Saunders, but it's a fight that boxing fans, for the most part, aren't interested in because the major fight is with Jermall Charlo. There's a lot of talk about how Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford can't come together to make their mega fight, but not as much pressure put on Canelo Alvarez to skip past fights like what he's doing with Saunders to get to the real fight that people want to see, which is Jermall Charlo. We're going to talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Martin. Welcome back to Fanon International Boxing. Please, before we get into the subject of the matter of the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, subscribe and follow me on Instagram. And thank you to everybody that comes by the live streams that we do Sunday through Sunday at 8 a.m. We're going to have some really good guests on the live stream, so make sure you guys tune in for that. The subject matter of this video is Canelo Alvarez and his upcoming fights, but yet where all that sits within the real goal that we should have for Canelo Alvarez, which is to prove that he is a better fighter than his contemporary Jermall Charlo. There are several mega fights in boxing, and there's a lot of pressure put on certain fighters to make certain fights. Like if you recall Floyd Mayweather Jr., when Floyd Mayweather Jr. was considered the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, he could do no right unless he fought Manny Pacquiao. It was owed to the boxing community for him to fight Manny Pacquiao. If he didn't fight Manny Pacquiao, then, Floyd Mayweather Jr. was a duck. We went through that for several years. It culminated in a fight in which Floyd Mayweather Jr. won. And, there we go. But you saw the whole time all of the pressure that was put on Floyd Mayweather Jr. to make that fight that people said was, career defining. So we look now into boxing and say, what other fights fit that mold, right? Well, the obvious thing that you do is you look at the superstars that are in the sport, or the people that are purported to be superstars. Like in the heavyweight division, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury. At middleweight, clearly, Canelo Alvarez is considered to be the man. And, Errol Spence at 147 pounds, Gervonta Davis at weight classes below that. These are people that are constantly being asked, when are you going to fight this guy? With Gervonta Davis, it's when were you going to fight Lomachenko? Now, are you going to fight Teofimo Lopez? With Errol Spence, what's going on with Terrence Crawford and all of that? But yet, Canelo Alvarez, strangely enough, has been left out of that discussion when it comes to his big major fight, which is with Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo was a champion and was at 154 pounds at the same time Canelo Alvarez was. He turned pro around, was around the same age as Canelo Alvarez. He's a champion and had become the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez at 160 pounds. Canelo Alvarez didn't fight him then. He's at 168. And that really is the big fight for Canelo Alvarez. Now, there is a fight that Canelo Alvarez is currently taking, right? And is being marketed as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. I have issues with that because of the positive drug test and the fact that he's not fought Jermall Charlo. But, people are giving that to him in this fight against Billy Joe Saunders, even though it's not the fight that I want to see. I'll tell you, I do think that it is, we're entering into a streak with Canelo Alvarez where hopefully it can culminate in the fights that everybody wants to see. Billy Joe Saunders is he's the current WBO champion at 168. He was a WBO champion at 160 pounds. His fighting style is not similar to the fighting styles that Canelo Alvarez has been facing recently. In that he is a very mobile fighter. He is somebody that is an agile fighter, somebody that is very good foot speed, very good hand speed, and can present problems for Canelo that guys like Sergey Kovalev couldn't pose. Problems that definitely a guy of this talent level of a Rocky Fielding or a Callum Smith that they could provide, or even somebody like Daniel Jacobs, who although he does have good mobility, is certainly not the mover and, kind of the outboxer that a Billy Joe Saunders is. So with this particular fight, I think that it is probably the best fight that Canelo Alvarez has had scheduled for him since the Daniel Jacobs fight. And quite honestly, I think that it might even be a more difficult fight than the Daniel Jacobs fight, provided that, Billy Joe Saunders is really the real deal and that he didn't just happen to look extra good against guys like, what is his name out of David Lemieux out of Canada. That's the fight that really sets out in a lot of people's minds about Billy Joe Saunders when you see him at his absolute best. So, but I think the plan for Canelo is to fight Billy Joe Saunders and then after that to fight Caleb Plant. Now, if I'm correct, and I think that I am, that will be the last fight or close to the last fight that would be on Canelo Alvarez's contract with DAZN. Canelo, I'm not sure if you guys recall, but Canelo Alvarez had parted ways with Golden Boy Promotions as his promoter, but yet still is living up to the obligations of the agreement that he had, or Golden Boy at the time had, with DAZN. And I believe that after he left his last fight against Callum Smith, he looked over it might have been Skip, can't remember what the name, but he's looking over the DAZN crew and he said, two more, right? So those two would be Billy Joe Saunders, which is a tough fight. And if he gets past him, and I don't have any, no doubt that he will get past that, then Caleb Plant would be the fight after that. And then from there, who knows whether or not they're going to renew at DAZN, but he would be open to making a mega fight with Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo at the same time has a good route to making fights that are big name fights for him, even though they're not as big as the Canelo Alvarez fight. Jermall Charlo has potential fights with Gennady Golovkin is one that he could have. Gennady Golovkin, I think he said he's not moving to 168. So if Gennady Golovkin wants one more shot, at being a unified champion, the fight with Jermall Charlo was there. Of course, he has a fight that more than likely is not going to take place with Demetrius Andrade, and he also has up at 168 a lot of people calling for a fight with David Benavidez. I don't really think that the David Benavidez fight is going to happen because of the tone that is being taken by Ronnie Shields, who's the trainer of Jermall Charlo. His stance on it, at least from the little sound bites that I've heard, is that that there's really nothing that David Benavidez offers to him. And I think he also might have said the same thing about Demetrius Andrade. What I'm hoping that is Ronnie Shields just really thinking, okay, we're going to make sure that we fight and we go a straight path to get that Canelo Alvarez fight. Really, the best, if Jermall's going to stay at 160, I wouldn't hold him to any different standard than I would to anybody else. The other champions in that are Demetrius Andrade and, who is the WBA champion? I'm not sure who the WBA champion is right now at 160 pounds. They may actually have to have somebody fight for that. But the IBF is Gennady Golovkin, and the WBO is Demetrius Andrade. So if he's going to stay there, clearly those are the two fights. But then eventually, when Canelo Alvarez gets done with whatever he's doing, hopefully we'll get that fight at the end. And I hope that more videos like this and more people will constantly keep in people's mind that really is a fight that boxing fans deserve, but the mainstream media is really not going to push because they're already backing Canelo, right, as this super, as the next guy or the guy that's the head of boxing. And it doesn't seem like they might be willing to, or too happy if he was going to take that chance with a guy that is as dangerous as Jermall Charlo. Regardless, that's my take on the matter. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.